But, you look at safeties in the NFL right now. If you want a guy who can come up and, play in the box, defend the run, you're probably picking Derwin James, right? If you want a guy who's a stud in coverage, has a ton of range, you're probably taking a guy like Minkah Fitzpatrick. If you want a guy who can do both of those at a really high level, you take Kevin Byard. Alrighty, welcome everybody back to another video here on the channel. If you don't know who I am by now, my name is David. I also go by Miller Football, and I'm currently doing a series here on this channel where I am going through all 32 teams in depth leading up to the 2023 NFL season, kind of talking about what they did during the offseason, what happened to them last season, and what my expectations are for them going into the upcoming season. And because I'm a Chicago Bears fan, there were 31 teams out of the 32 in the league that I can't give like a personal in-depth insight into. So to kind of counteract that, I've been bringing on fans of all 32 teams as guests for this. And to my right, I've got my buddy Cass. We're going to be talking about the Tennessee Titans today, his favorite team. So before we jump into this today, how are you doing today?
I am great. I believe I'm the only fan in the world of this team. I think I'm by myself. But yeah, I'm doing great, and I've really been excited for this for a little while. We've been trying to get this together for a little minute.
Yeah. It scheduling's been tough, but here we are finally the day after the first game of the season. Hopefully I get this uploaded before Sunday. I will, but I got to figure out how I'm going to do it. But looking at the Titans, the biggest thing that has happened to them this offseason by far is the signing of wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins. So just kind of, as the first question to lead us into talking about the Titans here, what are your thoughts on the move?
Dude, me personally, as just a human being, there could not have been a signing that made me happier more. The reason I became a Clemson fan when I was younger was because of DeAndre Hopkins and Sammy Watkins. And now he plays for my favorite team in the NFL. The team that really, they don't write it better. I'm coming from Oliver, from being getting drafted by the Houston Texans, having to watch him play my team twice a year, having to watch him gash my team a couple of times. Now we're not getting. This is one thing that a lot of Titan fans will say, and I don't agree. We might not even get the D-Hop that played in Arizona at certain points, but we're gonna get a D-Hop. I think we could get a D-Hop that was better than any receiver on our roster when we signed him. Without a can mentor, because him and Trey could have the similar type of game. I feel like Trey could play a similar type of game, as maybe not up to that level that DeAndre got up to, but could play a similar type of skill set that DeAndre could. So that's going to help Trey having the same way I think it helped AJ Brown having Julio, having his mentor play with him for a season, even though Julio didn't put that big of an effect on. I feel like DeAndre with Burks could be kind of the same type of thing. Mm-hmm. And also, I just think it helps overall the receiving room, because DeAndre is going to draw people. People are going to, when DeAndre's on the field, people are going to have to cover him, which frees up, because before that, if the Titans wouldn't have signed anybody, Burks would have probably been getting double teams. And that's we got to really think about it. Burks struggles to get off 1v1 sometimes. It would have been some rough showings with Burks getting double teamed, Chig getting double teams, because that's what would have happened.
Yeah.
We would have been seeing 9 people boxes. It would have been crazy.
Yeah. For sure. You mentioned that you might not even get the Arizona version of DeAndre Hopkins, right? And unfortunately, in preparation for this video, I went back and subjected myself to the 2022 Arizona Cardinals all 22 to kind of see what D-Hop looked like last year, what his role was, kind of what he looked like, because obviously he came in late in the year after the whole PED thing, and he didn't have a real quarterback throwing him the football. I can say, as much as I hate to say it, DeAndre Hopkins isn't DeAndre Hopkins anymore. He's still a damn good receiver. I'm not saying he's going to come out and look like Julio did for the Titans, right? He's still better than that. Mm-hmm. But the version of DeAndre Hopkins you're getting now, and I think this will actually fit really well with the way Tim Kelly used DeAndre Hopkins back when, he was in Houston in 2019 when Tim Kelly was the offensive coordinator there. He almost feels more like a power slot, like a big slot receiver, in the sense that he's not going to beat press anymore. He doesn't have a lot of juice on the outside, which I know sounds insane to say, considering that is what DeAndre Hopkins has kind of made a career off of, is being a dominant ball winner on the outside, on top of being a really good route runner and having incredible hands. He still has the route running ability. He still has the incredible hands. He's just not going to beat guys to the outside. So if you put him in the slot, which I would imagine is where they're going to play him, I don't know if that's like 100% confirmed or not. He's going to not only pull mismatches, but it's going to kind of free up other guys like Treylon Burks to play on the outside and kind of develop out there. And like you said, the two of them being in the same receiver room is going to be great mentorship for Treylon Burks because he is somebody that on paper is very similar to DeAndre Hopkins. Now, I would say personally, I think Treylon Burks in a weird way is more similar to like a Deebo Samuel. That would be my ideal projection for him.
Yeah, I could see that, like the athleticism
Right.
aspect.
And I'm not saying you like put him in the backfield, play him at running back. He's exactly Deebo Samuel. I'm saying like he's just going to be a really good rack receiver. He's somebody that, has the athleticism to get open over the middle of the field. And once you get him the ball in open space, he can make guys miss. He can outrun guys, things like that. I think that suits Burke's skill set a lot better. However, in this offense that Tim Kelly runs, I don't know if we're going to get to see a lot of that. And we'll get into that when we talk more about the scheme. But either way, it's a fantastic move. You get like a legit weapon in Tennessee, something that you guys just didn't have, at least not a proven one. Now, there's some guys in this room that I like, but
this is my thing. If the Titans would have got DeAndre Hopkins, like we're talking about on the brink of being maybe the worst team in the league,
okay. I thought you were going to say on the brink of being the worst receiver core in the league. And I was going to say, no, you would have been the worst. But no, on the brink of being the worst team, I don't think is a far-fetched statement either.
Because like I had mentioned before, you can't have a young player who's still trying to learn his way in the NFL getting double teams and stuff like that. Like that's going to struggle. That's going to halt his development. That's going to destroy his confidence. Once you destroy a player's confidence, then that's everything.
Yeah.
I'll draw comparisons to a guy that I find very similar to like Treylon Burks mentality wise. And that's the guy that used to play for the Browns that the Browns drafted in Corey Coleman. Okay. A guy that was thrust in to be the number one receiver. They chose not to bring anybody else in, chose to remain him as the number one receiver. He drew double teams his whole rookie year, and that destroyed his mentality, and he wanted to be traded. Because he wanted to go to a team where he could be with other receivers that could help him, and then his confidence was shot after Cleveland.
Yeah.
So that's like maybe not skill set wise, they're very different receivers, but I'm taking like that could have been the outcome we saw if the Titans don't bring in somebody else. Because, yeah, you got Chig, but, like, you're also banking on at points in the season last year, I thought Chig should have been the starter anyway. Because
it's kind of wild to me that he wasn't. Like, he was very clearly the most talented player, not only in your tight end room, but I would say the most talented pass catcher on the team, period.
And I thought I guess because they liked the veteranship that Hooper brought, but this is weird even too, because Austin isn't like the typical tight end you would see for this Titans team. He's not a great blocker.
Right.
And so it was kind of crazy to me that you actually have a guy that maybe is on like the same level or a little bit better blocker or worse blocker than Hooper. Maybe even on
he's better. I would confidently say he's better. Because at least Chig has the desire, right? Like Chig, even if he's not necessarily all there in terms of like his footwork and his hand placement, his technique as a whole, the willingness is there. Chig wants to hit people. And that's like the biggest thing. I cannot stress this enough, just as a little rant on tight ends, right? When you see tight ends that can't block in the NFL, 95% of the time it's an effort thing. 95% of the time it's not a skill set thing. It's not that they're not being coached right. It's just that they don't care. Mike Gesicki, for example, the worst blocking tight end in football, it's all effort. He is for any of my longtime viewers out there, he is to blocking what Eddie Jackson is to tackling. He simply does not care. And Chig, like I said, he's not the most technically refined blocker in the world, but he wants to hit a motherfucker, and he wants to hit him hard. And that is a solid 95% of blocking for tight ends. So I love Chig as a blocker. I think Chig's a really nice blocker, especially compared to Austin Hooper.
And I'll bring up, but now that we're on the topic of blocking, there was a receiver released from this team that a lot of people got really surprised about, and that's former Titans draft pick Racey McMath, who they thought was the only guy that had for real speed on the team. Like he had
Did
legit.
Racey get cut? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, Racey got cut. He had legit 4.2 speed, like for real coming out of college in the 40. He had 4.2 speed. The only guy that fans saw that actually had beat you downfield speed. But over other guys like a NWI, for example, who Vrabel has fell in love with since they got him as a UDFA out of Indiana. Because if you want to talk about a guy that wants to block and wants to put his name in a hat, NWI isn't the best receiver. He's not going to be a guy that beats double coverage and goes up and gets them like Diop did against the Bills a couple of years ago. That's not going to be. But if you need somebody to catch a block on a third down to break a long touchdown, there's more NWI blocking highlights out than there are of him actually receiving. Like that team with the way they run Derek and the way they have a run scheme before. I don't know how this scheme would look like with Kelly 100%, but the way they've ran before, they need receivers that were willing to block. Was willing to block. NWI was willing to block. Every receiver that you basically see, Robert Woods last year, he was an older receiver and was willing to get in there and block. Now, I'm wondering how willing a 30-year-old DeAndre Hopkins will be to get in there and get his hands dirty, per se.
Right.
And I'm worried that the defenses will be able to notice D-Hop's not in on the play. Is it a run play? That's what I'm worried about a little bit. Like if they see Burks and NWI in, I'm worried they might be like, it's a run play right here. But stuff like that worry me. But the whole thing about D-Hop not wanting to practice, I've seen none of that. D-Hop's been willing to work his tail off to keep things. He's been willing to work since he got to Tennessee because I think he's really wanting to prove some of the doubters that were really talking about him. He's wanting to at least prove he can still go.
Yep. And that's the thing. Like I said, I don't think D-Hop sucks now. I don't think D-Hop's like a shell of himself like Julio or Robert Woods were when they got to Tennessee. But I would say any Titans fans out there that think they just got like a superstar, maybe temper your expectations a little bit. You got a really good receiver, but D-Hop's not quite D-Hop anymore. But he's smart. He's a great route runner. I'm sure he'll still find ways to be productive, and you'll still be able to lean on him a little bit. But speaking of needing to lean on him, right? D-Hop is a QB's best friend because of how smart he is and his ability to get open and his consistent hands and his ball-winning ability. There are 3 quarterbacks currently in Tennessee that absolutely can use that. So my next question for you, Cass, is what are your thoughts on the quarterback situation right now? Like, how do you think that's going to play out? Who do you think is going to end up being the starter, not only by mid-season, but also long-term?
Okay, so I've had harsh realities coming to terms with this because if anybody knows me, I've been a fan of Ryan since he got here. I love the skills that he brings, but I've had to with something. Realistically, we spent 2 early draft picks on 2 quarterbacks. Ryan's on a contract year making a lot of money. Which means if we were to just not saying we would or anything, if we were to re-sign him, we'd have to pay him even more money than what he's making now. Realistically, that's probably what he would want. That's not going to happen because he's not that play. He's not the player he was when he got that contract. We drafted a quarterback in the 2nd round, traded up to take a quarterback in the 2nd round. That's who I think is the quarterback of the future. if you were to have me look into the future, if a team has a quarterback go down and drastically needs a quarterback and are starting like a backup, I could totally see a team trade for Malik Willis before the trade deadline.
Okay.
Because then the Titans would be able to at least recoup something because the team would be needy enough to overtrade for him.
Mm-hmm.
Like overpay for what they would. Say, for example, okay. Say Jordan, let's just put Jordan Love. Say Jordan Love, something happened to Jordan Love. We're just going to throw his name in the hat. I totally think the Packers would be willing to. Well, no, that's not a good team. Okay, hold on. That's not a good example.
I get what you mean, though. Like, yeah, I get where you're going with that. Do you think Malik would be able to make that kind of impact on a team? Because, I mean, we're talking about a guy that last year got benched for Josh Dobbs, who the Titans brought in off the street.
The quarterback that we saw last year was not the quarterback I saw in the preseason. The stats might say differently, but okay. Malik drastically improved as a passer. He had 3 interceptions in the preseason to 4 touchdowns, I think. I'm not 100% sure on the stats. But we got to think. One of the interceptions was a bit high to his tight end, Josh Wiley. That was intercepted.
Mm-hmm.
Then we had 2 passes where he did the exact same thing, where he misread a middle linebacker drop, threw to a slanting receiver. It happened back-to-back games against the Patriots and against the Vikings. He misled a backing middle linebacker, threw the slant, and the linebacker bit up and picked the ball off. It happened in both games. And those are
that
things
seems like not to sound disrespectful, but that kind of seems like a pretty easy mistake, no? Like something that that you most starting quarterbacks would be able to not only learn from after doing it once, but just be able to avoid altogether. Because I feel like unless you're going up against like Fred Warner or like Tremaine Edmonds because of his size and his quickness, I feel like that's something that's pretty easy to pick up on, you know?
Well, that's
at least at the NFL level.
That's the point I'm making is like, if you were to trade him to the Houston Texans, would Malik make an impact? No. But if you trade him to a team like, if Malik Willis would have been on the San Francisco 49ers last year when Brock Purdy got hurt, I think that team could at least sustain drives. Like they were having when they had no quarterback and Christian McCaffrey was playing quarterback, they would have loved to have Malik just because they would.
Well, yeah, I'm sure they would have when they literally didn't have any other quarterbacks on the roster.
But that if you put him on a team, like if somebody's quarterback got hurt and the team has weapons, you put Malik on that team, I think that would put him in a better situation. I'm not saying he could go to some random
I was going to
team.
say, with all due respect, Tennessee might be the worst possible situation for Malik right now because you have limited weapons. The offensive line isn't necessarily great. And, we were talking about it a little bit before we started recording. The scheme isn't necessarily one that a quarterback of his skill set is going to execute very well. You're looking for more of a quarterback like Ryan or like Will Levis and less like a Malik Willis. Like he's not the type of passer you want, so to speak. Like
I've deemed it's a funny joke among me and a bunch of my friends. I've deemed Malik Willis, like his nickname to me is John Robinson's last FU to the Titans. That's for real. Him, and I haven't put the toe on it yet because I'm not really ready to say that yet. But him and Caleb Farley may be John Robinson's last go screw yourself team.
Yeah.
Because
can't say I'm a big Caleb Farley believer, so I understand that.
Because that's the reason the team's really the bad team building from general manager John Robinson is really the reason the team's in the position it is.
Sure.
Because it was him that didn't want to negotiate with A.J. Brown. It's him that chose to trade him when everybody else in the organization said, get the deal done, pay him whatever he wants. But he decided that he didn't want to pay him, that he thought the Titans could win without A.J. We saw that didn't happen. We also drafted Isaiah Wilson, bust. Drafted Caleb Farley, hasn't performed too well. And like, you can't spend multiple year draft picks and not have production, and then also sign free agents that don't have production too, and then your team still be good. That doesn't work. That doesn't, like, you can't just bake on the team you had to just be good every year without you adding new pieces to it. Traded for Julio Jones and spent a lot of money on it. We're still paying Julio now, and he's been off the team for coming up on, this would be the second season. So.
Yeah, it's, with all due respect, it's definitely not a roster that is built very well. There's a lot of issues, like, you know, we were talking about it before, and I've kind of been teasing you for months about it now. I'm really not a big fan of what the Titans have going. There's certain aspects of this team I like. There's certain players on this team I like, but as a whole, I don't think it's built very well. I don't think the infrastructure is great personnel-wise. Now, coaching-wise, different story. Obviously, Mike Vrabel's an incredible head coach. I think Tim Kelly's a good head coach, but I am worried about how he's going to mesh with the offense. And like I said, we'll talk about that more when we get to the scheme. But kind of looking back at the Titans last year, this is a team that went 7-10. They were second in the AFC South, 3-5 at home, 4-5 on the road, and then lost every single one of their last 5 games. In fact, if you go back and look, this is a team that between the first half and the second half of the season almost looked like a completely different football team. And just kind of as my next question here, I'm curious, what do you think were the biggest factors in that kind of like second half drop off for the Titans last year?
Okay. So I've said this, and I don't want you to think that I'm saying anybody's a better this one player is a better player than the other.
Okay.
But we have 100% proof of this. There's a lot of factors going into this as well, but I'm just going to make a statement here. When Derek went down, the team found a way. Because I don't think, this is what I'm about to say, the skill gap between what Derek was able to bring and what the backs that they replaced Derek with were able to bring was lower than the skill gap between Ryan and the quarterbacks they brought in. That's the point, because the injuries that were on the offensive line as a whole, not even the injuries that were on the offensive line. Dennis Daly has to be one of the worst players I've ever seen play in any, not even just in the NFL. Like, because Taylor went down and we spent a 4th round pick trading for Dennis Daly from the Carolina Panthers because we thought we needed to shore up the left tackle position. And he was horrible. Didn't fit in with schematically what the Titans ran. Didn't fit anything. And if you actually go back and watch it, as a little like icing on the cake to his horrible season, Dennis Daly led up the sack on Josh Dobbs. That was the sack fumble that ended the Titans season last year, as a little icing on the cake. So, like, do I think the biggest thing I think that led to the drop-off from the team is there was a lot going on off the football field. Like, after the 7-3 game, John Robinson got fired. Todd Downing got arrested. And then Mike Vrabel was trying to put out the fires, doesn't want certain players commenting on certain things and things. Like, there's a lot going on in the facility, like in the team building. And I think it might have struggled because it might have caused maybe Vrabel not to focus his full focus on game planning because he was dealing with the other stuff that was outside. Because he was really having to be the GM. He was the GM for the last half of the season. They didn't bring in he was like him and the assistants were being the GM, dealing with all like the cuts and stuff. And then he was also dealing with every week having to comment on Todd's arrest, having to comment on if they're going to fire him or not. Every week the media was hounding him about what they were going to do with Downing. Because not only did Downing get arrested, but he got arrested after his best play calling game against Green Bay. And he got arrested after not being relatively good all year. Like, people were calling for the dude's job even before the DUI. So it was like, is there one thing that caused the Titans to lose those last 7, no. Jacksonville got really hot,
Mm-hmm.
started winning a lot of games. Tennessee got really cold because of a bunch of outlying factors. Injuries were a problem. Ryan had been playing basically superhero ball on one leg, and then in the Chargers, he hurt the other one. So he ended up finishing the Chargers game and then was just out for the rest of the year because.
Which that was what, 3 games at the end of the year that he missed?
Yeah. Because that just shows, because it came out later that like Vrabel was very like in Ryan, like with Ryan, trying to see what he could play, what he couldn't, because Vrabel knew that the drop off from quarterback to quarterback was massive. Because we had saw Malik play in that preseason and he didn't look good.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't, it like, as a person that's seen a lot of football, if you don't look good in the preseason against backups, you're most likely not going to look good in the regular season against starters.
I wouldn't say that. I think that's kind of a misconception. I would say that's kind of a misconception because some guys, they'll look bad in the preseason. I'm trying to think of a good example. Jamar Chase. Remember his rookie year? He looked terrible in the preseason. All throughout training camp, he had all those drop issues. And then he went on to have an incredible rookie year, looked like a fantastic football player. And it's not like he's an outlier. It's definitely not something that lines up as much as people think. Now, there are a lot of examples of bad players just being bad across the board. But I don't think having a bad preseason's like a guarantee that a player is not going to be good. But I mean, Malik Willis at the end of the day, not to build off of your point, right? The way I see it is Malik was a raw quarterback. Like coming out, there were so many things that he needed to work on, and he never really got a chance to do that. We see a lot of young quarterbacks come in the league and they sit for a year.
Realistically,
sit behind a veteran.
Sorry, realistically, if it would have worked out completely how the Titans would have wanted to, the only reason the Titans took Malik Willis is because took Will Levis is because they saw how Malik played at the end of the season and started like worrying about his development going forward.
Yeah, and that's what happened. The Titans butchered his development. They threw him out way before he was ready.
That's what
you brought up early on with Traylon Burks and Corey Coleman. It fucked up his confidence, and now he's not, where he needs to be. He's behind on his development, and you have the impending doom of Tannehill's contract running up at the end of the season. So yeah, you panic and pick a quarterback that, has a higher floor and I think can be better. Well, not can be, will be better than Malik was. So it ended up working out, but no,
But this is the point I was trying to make is if Ryan doesn't get hurt, realistically, you have Malik maybe sit for this season, and I don't even think it's too harsh to say you have Malik maybe sit for this coming up season that we're about to get into, and then when Ryan's contract's up, that's when Malik gets the helm.
Yeah,
because a lot of people would like to say if Malik never got a chance to start last year, then they would have cut Ryan this offseason. I don't like that idea.
I don't think they would have. I think that would have been, unless Malik like really blew them away, which I don't think would have been the case after a year, then I don't think that would have been the case either. And that's coming from someone who is incredibly low on what Ryan Tannehill is at this point in his career. Which, speaking of Tannehill, I do want to say, I think, like, I get what you're saying with the quarterback drop off, and that's totally valid. The difference between Ryan and then Malik and Josh Dobbs was huge. But let's not act like Tannehill didn't also contribute to the negative in the back half of the season with the Titans, because Tannehill very much is a system quarterback, right? Like he is the textbook example of a system quarterback at this point, and that's totally fine. System quarterbacks have a place in the league. They always have, they always will. But when that system breaks down, which is what happened last year due to lack of talent and personnel and injuries, and obviously all of the outside factors going on with his play caller and his offensive coordinator getting arrested and the GM getting fired and the head coach kind of taking his mind away from the actual on the field product, Tannehill sucked. Like point blank period. He looked terrible in the back half of the year. And it wasn't like a something that you can necessarily blame on that injury that you brought up. It almost felt like every single play he was going in with a predetermined read no matter what, he was pulling the trigger. And you just can't do that in the NFL. That's not how the game works. And it led to a lot of really ugly turnovers, a lot of really ugly almost turnovers, and just a lot of really bad decisions. And I think last year was a prime example of what Tannehill is if you change his offense, if you take away the crutch that is play action and getting to hand the ball off to Henry constantly and just getting to hit his first read over the middle of the field consistently off of a bootleg, because that's Tannehill's game. He fakes the handoff, turns around, then just flips his head real quick and hits the first guy he sees. That's Tannehill's game to a T. And again, nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that as like a slight to Tannehill. That's just the reality of the situation. And when you take that away from him, he's not somebody that can improvise. He's not somebody that's a great drop back passer. He's not somebody that, reads the field well to hit his second or third read. He panicked. He straight up panicked in the back half of the year. And I'm not saying that you should place a ton of the blame on him, but I do think he was a bigger contributor than I think a lot of Titans fans want to acknowledge, because I know a lot of Titans fans like yourself are big Ryan Tannehill fans. And I understand that. You've had consistently decent, at least, if not good, quarterback play over the past couple years.
After
and you don't
years
want,
of
right,
horrible quarterback
exactly. And you got used to it, and you don't want that to end. And now that's kind of coming to a close, and you're concerned. I will say, we'll talk about Will Levis later when we get to the draft. I think at the very least, his floor is like what Ryan Tannehill has been doing. His ceiling to me is like a Matt Stafford type of player. So I think you guys will be okay long term. But a lot of, my not disdain, but non-confidence in Tannehill that, you've heard me express time and time again this offseason when we've talked off camera is a result of a lot of that from last year. And a big reason for that is because the scheme is changing up. Now, we'll talk about that in just a second. I want to take a look at some of the numbers last year for the Titans, specifically EPA per play and the scoring numbers. Now, keep in mind, these are for the entirety of the season. So a lot of these numbers are low because of the back half of the year. I don't know what the numbers look like in the first half. I didn't check that. I probably should have. Maybe that's a miscalculation on my end. But this is a team that was 26th in rushing EPA per play. They were 22nd in passing EPA per play. But they had the number one run defense. They were first in run defense EPA per play. They were 28th in coverage EPA per play. And then looking over at scoring, they were 28th in points scored with 298, 15th in points allowed with 359, and then 26th in point differential with negative 61. So before we jump off of that, were there any numbers there that stood out to you that maybe you want to comment on or, lead you to some sort of point or something of that nature?
Okay, so my biggest point there was the passing defense EPA is like when you look at it, we had the two guys that were supposed to be the starters in Farley and Fulton, both go down for basically a majority of the season. We had we had two rookies playing, an undrafted free agent and a second round pick of Roger McCurry. Those became the two starters on the outside. And we brought in Terrence Mitchell from the Patriots to play inside at slot. That was a very much patchwork cornerback room. And as good as our safety duo is, I think our safety duo is at least top 10 in the NFL. I don't think anybody can argue that. Byard and Hooker are very good. But as good as they are, you still need good corner play. And besides Roger towards the back half of the season, which is funny, that's when we started losing games, but that's actually when Roger started picking up his game, when he started finally getting a foothold in the team. This cornerback room, if healthy, I think could be a lot better. We brought in Sean from Tampa Bay. We brought in Sean from Tampa Bay. Christian hopefully is healthy. So I think Christian's at least decent when he's healthy. Because I like. And then we're going to get Roger. I know Trey Avery's out for the game Sunday, but hopefully he gets back and he starts playing again. Because Trey was another guy that towards the end of the season, even as a UDFA, started playing playing good. Once Fulton came back and he didn't have to be that starting outside guy. Because if we remember right, the game against the Raiders, Trey Avery had impressed Vrabel so much that he was put man-to-man on Davante Adams the entire game.
Mm-hmm.
As a UDFA rookie, to impress your head coach so much to the point where he's willing to put you on the opposite team's number one corner and just like get you to mirror him wherever he goes on the field, that's impressive. Like,
absolutely.
Because it's not like really Vrabel had a choice either. Because Rodgers' arm length is not going to compete with what Davante brings to the table. So it's not really like he had a choice. But it's also not like Avery played horrible in that game as a UDFA against Davante Adams. Ended up winning that game. So, and it's actually funny. Terrence Mitchell, the corner I talked about that we brought in from the Patriots, he was the actually one that gave up a lot of passes to Mac Hollins that game.
Yeah.
So, Trey Avery actually did really good against Davante Adams, and you 100% agree. Davante Adams is one of the best receivers in the league.
Yeah, there's no question about it. That's a whole other conversation because I feel like a lot of people kind of sleep on Tay right now because of the quarterback situation he had last year. But yeah, he's one of the three best receivers in football. And to go toe-to-toe with him as a UDFA is very, very impressive, to say the least.
And that's another thing I think the Titans have been sleepily good at because they've had to be because of how bad they've drafted and how bad they've signed. They've had to have guys as UDFAs that come in and play good. When you really look at this roster, they really have. You have al-shaair, who's came in and been really good. He's now the starting nose tackle. Yep. You have NWI, who we talked about. He was a UDFA out of Indiana. We have now Trey Avery, who's the fourth-string cornerback above first-round draft pick Caleb Farley. Like, it's actually – it's crazy how good this team's scouting department is of players that don't get drafted versus their scouting department of the draft picks. It's like they got two different scouting departments. It's really
They
funny.
might. They honestly might. They might have, a lot of teams, they'll designate scouts to different aspects of scouting. So maybe that's the problem. Maybe they've got the wrong guys doing the wrong things. They got to flip them. Put the guys who are scouting all these UDFAs into their actual scouting room and then let the guys who are actually scouting go look at UDFAs. Which ironically, we'll talk about it later on. I thought they did an awesome job in the draft this year, apart from one pick, which
I will agree. I will agree. Rand Carthon did really good this year.
But yeah, I agree with their cornerback room. Like, obviously, when you have your top two corners go down and you're relying on two rookies, one of which was a UDFA, it's going to be tough. No, you're good.
How much Vrabel is confident in this cornerback room now, with the fact that they moved one of their better depth corners in Elijah Molden to safety. I think that shows his faith in what the cornerback room had, like the depth now versus his faith in it last year. Because I'm a guy that think Christian Fulton can be a number one corner, and like not number one, like best corner in the league, but I think he can be
I get what you mean, yeah.
And I'm excited to see Sean play because that's a guy I didn't really get to see a lot of play in Tampa. I don't watch Tampa Bay games. But I'm excited to see what he brings to the table because he looks like a guy that's like slimmer, more of the break balls up. I'm excited to see him play.
I get what you mean. And see, I actually think, me personally, like I'm not saying you're wrong, but me personally, I can't say I agree with Fulton being a number one. I think he can be a damn good number two. It's just he lacks the true athletic prowess to be a number one corner. Right, you want to have a guy that can keep up with the best of the best and lunge at balls and make plays, right? So I don't think Fulton can be that, but I do think that Sean Murphy-Bunting can be that. And he is only 26, I want to say. So he's in a prime spot to break out. And this is absolutely a secondary that could use that. So I think ideally if you end up with Murphy-Bunting as your number one, Fulton as your number two, and then Roger as your nickel corner, you're in really good shape. I think that can be a really, really nice secondary. But speaking of the secondary, last year, obviously you mentioned with all the injuries, Vrabel really took a lot of pressure off them with the types of coverages the Titans ran last year. So Primarily, they were 10th in cover 2 with 16.4% of their snaps. If you know anything about cover 2, it takes a lot of pressure off of those corners and kind of deflects that back to the safeties, which when you have, like you mentioned, at least a top 10 safety duo in football that contains, in my opinion, the best safety in football, it's going to work out in your favor. Now, I know the EPA per play didn't really reflect that, but there were a billion other things going on too that we'll talk about. But
I love, like, you talking about Byard being like one of the better the best safeties in football. I love Kevin Byard so much as a person. Like he's okay. What's a Bears comparison to what Kevin Byard is?
What, like
Kevin Byard,
the best
Kevin
of his
Byard
position?
Kevin Byard is to the Titans. Like from a fan aspect, people love Byard. Okay. Okay, got it. Kevin Byard is to the Titans what Cole Kmet is to the Bears.
I would say that's kind of disrespectful to Byard because there's a lot of Bears fans who do not like Cole Kmet.
Okay,
Surprisingly.
I was trying to think of like
if you're looking
guy.
A hometown guy that's beloved and Jack Sanborn. Honestly, that might be your best bet is Jack Sanborn. I don't think there's a single Bears fan that dislikes Jack Sanborn.
Okay.
If not hit, I want to say T.G. Edwards, but he's not like a homegrown guy. Like he's from Chicago, but obviously he got drafted or not drafted, but signed by the Eagles as a UDFA and then kind of developed there and now is here. So weirdly enough, I think the closest thing the Bears would have on the current roster is Jack Sanborn. Although Kmet is far more talented, he's just a bit more controversial with Bears fans because there's a lot of Bears fans that don't view him as an elite tight end or as like a great tight end or can be a great tight end. And then there's the guys like me who are like, he's already top 10 and is only going up. That's neither here nor there. Like I said, this is a team that ran a lot of cover 2. Surprisingly, they ran very little cover 3. They were 25th in the league in running cover 3 with 28.5% of their snaps. And the reason this is so surprising is because, like I said, they were first in run defense EPA per play. And if you know anything about cover 3 in the modern NFL, a lot of teams use that to fit the run because you get 8 guys up and around the box. It allows you to fit the run a lot better. And the Titans said, nope, fuck that. We don't need to do that. Our defensive line and linebackers are just good enough to do it on their own, which makes sense when you have David Long as your number 1 linebacker because the dude's the most underrated downhill run defender in the league, which I know it sucks that he's gone, but I think you guys will be okay, and we'll talk about that when we get more to free agency. That's not even the guy I'm talking about, surprisingly.
Wait, hold on.
You'll see.
Captain Aziz.
Okay. I didn't know he was a team captain, but no, that's not even the guy I'm excited about. We'll talk about him when we get to free agency. But they were 18th in cover 0 with 1.4% of their snaps, 15th in cover 1 with 21.2% of their snaps. They were second in quarters with 24.7% of their snaps, and that's another formation or another coverage, that will take a lot of the pressure off of the corners and kind of put that more onto the safeties. They were 24th in quarter half with 4.9% of their snaps. They were tied for 23rd in cover 5 with 0.5% of their snaps. So just kind of before we get into some more of the schematics and talk about the defense, what are your thoughts on this defense and specifically last year, given some of the shortcomings that the defense dealt with?
I've already mentioned it that I think a lot of the shortcomings, pass coverage wise, was doing a lot to like what was going on personnel wise. Because we've also got to think, as good as Byard and Amani are, even Amani dealt with some injuries, and which brought in a guy that I don't know how the Titans haven't reached out to and re-signed now. A guy I think was arguably one of their better pass defense players in Andrew Adams last year. Okay. It was a guy that absolutely balled out, in my opinion. He ended up breaking his tibia in the Cowboys game. So that was later in the season. So maybe no team signed him because he's not ready to go yet. Right.
And that'll happen. Yeah.
So I would be excited to see if he comes and plays back in the league, where he signs to. Because he was a guy that helped us win the Colts game with like a 90-yard pick 6. And like a guy that I really think even when Amani came back, it showed how much Vrabel liked Andrew. because he would run a lot of 3 safety sets.
Yeah.
So he
and that also takes a ton of the pressure off the corners, bringing in that third safety.
And I had talked about how good Trey Avery did against Devontae Adams.
Mm-hmm.
That was also very negative to what would happen later in the season when we would play the Eagles, because Vrabel tried to do that same thing that he did to Devontae Adams on AJ Brown, and it did not work.
Yeah, AJ, he's a bit more physically demanding, and also I'm sure was playing that game with a chip the size of Nebraska on his shoulder because of everything that happened with the Titans. So,
dude,
imagine. I just want to say, from his perspective, right? Imagine you get your big game against your former team that kind of fucked you over, and you look across from you and you're being guarded by a UDFA. Imagine the disrespect he must have felt in that moment. Like that, I get that the Titans, like, I'm not saying the Titans did it on purpose to be assholes and, like, show a lack of respect for him, because obviously they didn't have any other choice. But from his perspective, imagine what he must have, like, it's the reverse of Richard Sherman, right? When you test me with a sorry-ass receiver like Crabtree, when you test me with a sorry-ass corner that wasn't even drafted, that's what you're going to get, right? Because AJ Brown had a really big game against you guys, didn't he?
Yes, and I felt so bad for Trey Avery at one point. AJ caught a pass that was pass interference. Trey Avery got a pass interference call on it. AJ caught the ball, and like Trey jumped on him trying to tackle him, and AJ just walked into the end zone like he had a little like kid on his back, and like the dad was carrying. It was ridiculous, dude. Like you could have put 3 quarterbacks on AJ, and he would have had like. That was the type of game he was.
Game. Yeah,
that was the like.
I know it sounds corny, but like those revenge games, they always mean something to those players, and they always play better because of it. I don't think I've ever seen a revenge game with a legitimate superstar where he didn't ball the fuck out. I'm sure I'm skipping over one that's really notable that I'm just not thinking about. But like almost every single revenge game I can think of, the dude balled out. So I'm not. I can't say I would put too much blame on poor Trey Avery for that one.
But getting back to the defense, I was very surprised how good the defensive line was, being that we were missing, in my opinion, our superstar. I have his jersey on right now. Our superstar defensive player in Harold Landry. I think
superstar for Harold Landry.
He had 13 sacks the last year he played, and that was second in the NFL.
I still think that's a little rich, respectfully.
But okay, when Harold last played, Jeffrey really wasn't broken out. Last year was really Jeffrey's coming out party.
Sure,
really,
absolutely.
So what I meant by that is when last time Harold played, he was the superstar on the defensive line.
So you mean superstar relative to the team, not like league-wide superstar.
Yeah.
I get you. That's a different. Okay, I can agree with that 100%. And I would say he still is, because him and Danico Autry are like so integral to how the defensive line is ran and how all the blitzing and the stunts and whatnot happen. That, yeah, I mean, for the Titans defense specifically, he's absolutely a superstar. That's my bad. Usually when you hear the term superstar, you're thinking league wide. You're not thinking relative for the team. So that's my mistake. I misinterpreted.
Now, one thing I will say is relative to the whole league. I think Danico might be one of the most underappreciated players.
Certainly.
Because, like, if you – and I guess because a lot of people will say that for the Titans in general, because the Titans aren't a team that's, like, fun – like, people look at a lot. Like, that's one of the forgotten teams. Like, there's a famous story of Taylor Lewan getting drafted and one of his friends from Michigan calling him, and they didn't know that Tennessee had a NFL team, and it was that's one of like the real, like, Taylor said, I got to fix this. And that's one thing I will talk about a lot about free agency, because I know we were talking about that a few minutes ago. The turnover from the team to team
is insane.
Like,
I didn't even bother writing down all the free agents you guys lost, because there were so many, and so many of them were like depth pieces and shit. Like, I'm sure you think they'll have a bigger impact than I do, because you probably know a little bit better than I do about those types of guys. But
the only guy I can see really having we basically went without Taylor for almost 3 years now. Taylor's been
Mm-hmm.
so I thought Taylor was going to be cut last year.
Yeah.
So him having an extra year surprised me. But I knew as soon as Taylor was on the ground hurt, I knew it was another ACL tear because I knew what the first one looked like.
Mm-hmm.
I knew it was another ACL tear, and I said, watching that game, a week 2 game last year, and I saw Taylor go down, I said, that's it. That's Taylor's last snap of playing football ever. And I really do believe, now that one of his best friends just retired, Will, I think Taylor's retirement is going to be very soon. I'm not in.
Yeah. Jumping back to the defense there, and we'll talk more about free agency, obviously, here in a little bit. You bringing up Harold Landry and Danico Autry, those two guys are so integral to this defense because this is a defense that likes to stun a lot, right? Vrabel likes to get really creative with how he attacks the quarterback, and his favorite toys for that are Landry and Autry, because you've got Autry, who's this kind of like hybrid 3-tech defensive end, plays anywhere from 4-eye all the way out to like 5-tech and even out wider at times. And obviously he missed time last year along with Landry, because Landry, tore his ACL, if I'm not mistaken.
Landry didn't play a game all season.
Right. So Autry, obviously sick run defender, can be kind of the pin on like, loop around plays where he'll pin down, he'll crash, he'll lead up the block, and then Landry will kind of loop around and get into the backfield and get to the quarterback. But he's a good pass rusher in his own right. And then Landry is just a super athlete that can do all sorts of crazy things, that can bend around the edge, can come inside on these looper plays and do all sorts of fun stuff. And it's so fun. Real quick, just to finish up. No, you're totally fine. It's so fun to watch those two specifically work together, because they're not like, again, with all due respect, they're not like household names, right? The average NFL fan probably doesn't know who Danico Autry is. But those two together are such a sick duo that they should be a household name. Like they're awesome together. I love that pairing, and obviously Mike Vrabel does as well.
And that's one of the big things is, we saw that the Titans tried to replace what Harold brings to the table with now Chicago Bear,
DeMarcus Walker, baby.
DeMarcus Walker really tried to be the step-in, plug-and-play for Harold Landry, and we actually saw him have a career year.
Yeah, 7 sacks. He didn't play too bad.
So we got half of a Harold Landry. We got a 0.5. So I'm excited. I'm very excited to see what Harold looked. I understand that he might struggle, because normally players do struggle coming off of an ACL. Like,
sure.
I'm understanding that he might not be might not come off and get 13 sacks, 14 sacks. No,
right.
But if he gets above what DeMarcus got or above, I'll be happy. Like, because if I'm being 100% honest, and most Titans fans might, I thought Harold might have been a bust his first couple of years in the league. I didn't really like the way he played, because like, I felt like they were playing him too much off ball. Like, this is what I thought Harold was at the start. I thought Harold was a 4-3 linebacker playing 3-4. That's what it seemed like they were playing him as when early on. But since they've moved him to be more of the standard 3-4 pass rusher, it seems like it fits his game a lot more. And he's really thrived in that, because they were playing him a lot off ball early in his career, and it just did not fit his skill set.
Yeah.
And to be fair, they played him a lot off ball at Boston College, which was maybe the reason that Vrabel thought he could play off ball. But
yeah, and I mean, that's valid. You got to figure out where the guy fits at some point, right? And they absolutely did figure it out. Vrabel knows exactly how to use Landry, knows how to make him look great. And obviously, he probably won't have a 13-sack year. If he did, that'd be great. Wouldn't be too shocked, but I wouldn't bank on it. But if he does, a big reason he would be able to pull that off is because the defensive line is better than when he left it. Obviously, with Jeff Simmons being one of the 5 to 10 best defensive tackles in football now, which is saying a lot, because we are in an era with a shit ton of really good interior defensive linemen. So It's going to be fun to watch this Titans defensive line at full health. Obviously, you've got another guy I know all too well in Travis Gibson coming over, who is no superstar, but will be a good rotational piece.
This is what I will say. The defensive line starters and depth is insane. You got okay. I know we didn't really want to. So
no.
We're not going to
really. You can bring him up here. You can talk about him. Yeah.
So we got Arden, Tier, Landry, Simmons. Those are probably going to be your starting four, and then you're going to have like Audrey come in. You're going to have Travis come in. They can't not play Caleb Murphy after getting 4 sacks in the preseason, so he's going to play some sort of snaps. So it's then we've also got Rashad Weaver, who had 6 sacks last year. This like the depth of this defensive line is what I think makes the unit so good. Is you can constantly keep guys fresh.
Yeah,
like you, like this defensive. That's what I think is the biggest key point. And Valente and me have commented on it hundreds of times. This defensive line is the number one spot on this team, and it's not even close. And the defensive line is going to help the corners, and the defensive line is going to help the safeties, and the defensive line is going to help the middle linebackers. We talked about David Long leaving, going to Miami. We really don't know what that position is going to look like. We don't know what the corner position is going to look like with Sean being there. But these quarterbacks aren't going to be able to just sit in the pocket all day. And so that's going to be able to help the corners more. The quicker the ball gets out, the quicker the corners can bite on it. Corners can play like or press because the receiver isn't going to have time to break off. Like I think having a good defensive line is the number one thing you should look for when you go to build a defense. Because
and I agree 100%.
When we talk about that AFC Championship run for the Titans, that was the thing that really halted that Super Bowl run, is how bad our defensive line was. And Vrabel has made it his mission of Christ to make sure he's made it a mission to make sure the defensive line is never that bad again.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a team that, Vrabel, in his heart of hearts, wants to run a lot of cover one and man up everybody and just let Byard kind of roam out there, bring a safety up into the box. And like you said, when you have a better defensive line, you'll be able to do that more often, and that'll be a huge help. But kind of wrapping up with the defense, jumping over to the offense, this is where my concerns lie with this team. The defense, I think, will be fine, if not good. Offensively, I have my concerns, and the biggest reason for that is the scheme. Because, we've talked about it, and if you're a Titans fan, this is an offense that, at least since Ryan Tannehill's been around, has ran a wide zone, kind of play action heavy, a Shanahan scheme, right? The same type of thing that a lot of the league is running right now. And it's worked because as I brought up earlier on, it fits Ryan Tannehill's skill set perfectly. And every single player you have on this offense is perfectly built for this type of scheme. You run a lot of outside zone. Derrick Henry is arguably the best outside zone running back to ever play the sport. Your receivers, outside of D-Hop, and I guess even at this point in D-Hop's career, he doesn't really necessarily fit that, aren't like fantastic downfield separators, but they're great lateral separators, right? Traylon Burks, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, Chigakonkwo, obviously, and Kyle Phillips, they're all guys that laterally can get a lot of separation, can create mismatches, and then play good after the catch. Your offensive line, across the board, super athletic, a little undersized, and would be really good at getting out in space and hitting guys instead of trying to hold their own and open up gaps in like a gap scheme, right? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
That's why I'm hoping, and we had talked about it a bit, I'm hoping we could see, because of course Kelly's going to want to put his own stamp on his offense, because the whole point of Kelly coming in being the offensive coordinator is eventually he probably wants to get a head coaching job somewhere. That's the whole reason you coordinate. Right. So he would want to put his own stamp on the offense. So if he could look at his personnel, see that his personnel for this team is going to do good in the Pacific, but he also in this Pacific scheme. I think the perfect thing to do if he's a smart coach is to do a hybrid, like to do a mesh of the two, which fits in his own custom plays, like the plays he wants to run, as well as because with Derek, of course, you're going to want to run the ball. Like that's just schematically, you're going to use your best weapons on your team, and I still think Derek's the best weapon the Titans have on this team. Even though I've seen some people with some crazy takes saying DeAndre Hopkins is a better player right now than Derrick Henry, and it's
yeah, that's wild. But the issue is, like you said, Tim Kelly's going to want to put his own stamp on this offense, right? And Tim Kelly comes from the Bill O'Brien coaching tree, and if you know anything about that, his offense is a lot more of like a spread pro style offense, right? He asks not only a lot more of his receivers, but a lot more of his quarterback. And like I said, Tannehill's ability to get off his first read and actually like read the field and make plays, not good. Point blank period, not good. Now, I think Will Levis can do that, which is good for the future. But when you have every single player on your offense personally like built perfectly to play in one type of scheme, and then you promote an offensive coordinator that runs a completely different type of offense, that's worrisome. Like, that's a massive question mark. Like, we were talking about this before we started recording. The only two players that I am, like, 100% confident in translating to this type of offense outside of D-Hop, like the guys that were built around this offense pre-established, are Chig, because I think Chig in this offense would be very similar to, like, a Delaney Walker, and Kyle Phillips, because this offense is a lot of 11 personnel, so he would get on the field and be a true slot. But Kyle Phillips is out for the first half of the season, so that doesn't even really matter on his end right now. So you have an offense where literally two players on your offense fit it. Just two. And I'm not trying to say that every player on this team is like a scheme merchant, but at the end of the day, there's a reason why scheme matters. Scheme needs to play to the strengths of the players. And quite frankly, this type of offense that Tim Kelly is familiar with, bringing over from Bill O'Brien, ran when he was with the Texans in 2019 when D-Hop was there, does not play to the strengths of anybody here, except for D-Hop and Chig, like I said. So I will put it this way. The nicest way to put my feelings towards this is it's a massive question mark. Now, there is a world where Tim Kelly, is able to find a happy marriage between what Todd Downing was doing and what he wants to do. And you kind of like slowly transition into his offense. And once Levis has taken over and is at the helm, it'll be a lot different. But I'm still worried about Treylon Burks being a true downfield separator as your ex, winning a bunch of 50-50 balls, essentially playing like A.J. Brown is in Philly right now. That's what this offense would ask him to do. I'm worried about Nick Westbrook-Ikhine being a boundary receiver and not just like Jawan Jennings or Trent Sherfield in San Francisco or Miami, for example. I'm worried about Derrick Henry not being able to run the thing that he has made a career out of at a high clip and instead being asked to run between the tackles behind a bad offensive line. I am worried about this offensive line that is undersized and predicated on being super athletic, trying to run a gap scheme, trying to go man up. Like, for example, your center, who I cannot remember the name of for the life of me,
is Aaron Brewer is the smallest offensive lineman in the whole league.
Yes. And he's the type of guy that if you put him out like in a zone blocking scheme where he's going to kind of pull and get out in space and make plays, he'll be great. And a man-up scheme where you're going to ask him to take on a defensive tackle one-on-one, you might as well put Chig at center. Like, point blank period, you might as well try it, because I'm pretty sure that he is smaller than some tight ends in the NFL, not just being the smallest lineman in football. That is concerning. That's why he's coming over from San Fran, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
No, Brewer was our guard last year.
Oh, okay.
Dan Brunskill is the...
That's the one coming from San Fran. My apologies. Either way, he's still trying to transition from wide zone to potentially a gap scheme here. And that's just not going to work. Now, like I said, I'm not saying this is a guarantee that this is exactly how the offense is going to be run. Tim Kelly came in day one and said, forget everything you knew from Downing. This is my team now. I'm not going to say that for sure because I haven't been in the room. I don't know what the plan is.
And it
But
makes me
on paper,
even
it's
like
very worrisome.
it makes me feel a little bit better the fact that we didn't just hire Kelly off the street. Like Kelly was in this room last year. He was helping with this scheme last year. Like he was the assistant offensive coordinator last year for Downing. So it's not like he wasn't a part of the scheme last year.
Sure.
But like I had said, like you had said and I had said, he's going to want to put his own stamp on the team. So
right. Because not to cut you off, but just to make a point, what was the big reason why Titans fans didn't like Todd Downing?
It could be a multiple thing, but it was a lot of people put the blame on him for the way the passing game looked, which I don't even think was fair because that's personnel. But what I do think is he put like certain plays in that shouldn't have been ran. Okay, like they're on a 4th down, we ran a reverse with Malik Willis.
Yeah, that's goofy.
Like there's certain things that were just. It's like he was throwing things at walls and seeing what stuck.
See, it's ironic that that's your complaint with him because my complaint, and honestly, from what I've seen out of Titans fans complaining about him, is that he was too vanilla. Like, he just did not change anything. It was the same shit constantly. And it wasn't like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It was like, I know how to do maybe 4 things. Now, granted, I can definitely recall.
That's another thing. That's another thing I will say is if, say, for example, we got a false start on 2nd and 15, and it became 2nd and 15, you're getting 3 run plays up the gut and we're punting.
Exactly.
Like
precisely my point. You just illustrated it perfectly for me. Thank you. That is exactly my point. It was a vanilla-ass offense.
If anything negative happened, if we got a sack on 1st down, you get 3 runs up the gut and we're punting. Like. And if Derek breaks one for a 1st down, we're all right. We'll keep going.
Yeah. So from that, one of 2 things is going to happen, in my opinion, right? Either Tim Kelly's going to look at that and say, all of this sucked and it was vanilla and I hate it. We're throwing it out. Or he's going to say, Downing's a moron. I can do what he did better and adapt the offense that it was last year. And I'm sure I'm a moron and I missed some sort of interview or press conference or something where he laid out more specifically what his plan is for the offense. I looked for hours trying to find it. I couldn't. Maybe I'm an idiot and I missed it. But the point is, on paper, I am very, very concerned schematically for this offense and specifically for the personnel because I think they have the talent to be a good offense. It's just they don't fit the scheme that Kelly is
the word
known for.
The word I've used to describe the offense is gamble, because I feel like very much that's what the offense could be. You're bringing in a lot of guys because, like, the biggest thing to Carthon was get Simmons paid. He did that. That was his first interview he ever did. The first question he ever commented on was asking, "What is your first act of business?" And he said, "Get Jeffrey Simmons paid." He did that, and it left us with not very much money after that. So he didn't have a lot to go out to get these top edge free agent players. So scheme-wise, it might end up hurting us with the personnel because we had to go and get guys that were depth pieces on their other team that are now looking for chances to start. Like, a lot of people talk about Andre Dillard being drafted by the Eagles and never getting never playing. It's hard to play when you're behind 2 of the best left and right tackles in the entire league. Like, I'm not saying Dillard's going to come in and be a top 10 tackle. That's not what I'm saying. But if he can be 20, that'll be better than Dennis Daly. Dennis Daly was 32.
Right.
Like, if he can be 20, I'll be happy.
Yeah, no, and I think, the contract that he got from the Titans kind of leans towards that being the expectation. I think Dillard can be that. I think he'll be fine. I don't think he's going to be great, but I also don't think he'll be a liability. I don't think he's going to get Tannehill put on his ass consistently. I don't think he's going to muck up the run game. I think he'll be fine. And that's all you need right now. You don't, obviously, ideally, you want an elite left tackle, but given what has been happening with Tennessee and the recent history of offensive linemen, I think you're more than okay with fine.
Because, the position on offensive line that worries me the most, and it was worrying me even before MPF got suspended, was right tackle. Because Dennis Daly overshined how bad MPF was. Because let's not act like MPF came in as a rookie and was absolutely great. It was just in comparison to how bad Daly was. Which I had said that I thought the smartest idea was to go with Julian Duncan or Jalen Duncan at right tackle. Because then if you have Duncan play better than MPF, you've got a guy. But they ended up going with Chris Hubbard, who they had signed as a free agent, and he's going to be the guy. And then it's going to be an open competition when MPF gets back. That's what Brady said.
Now, just to kind of wrap up talking about the offense here, because I want to transition over to free agency, because I think we've about worn out talking about last season. Just because I have to bring them up, they won't matter that much given the new offensive coordinator most likely. But looking at the run splits from last year, this is a team that was 4th in outside zone with 37% of their snaps. They were 26th in inside zone with 16% of their snaps. Tied for 7th in duo with 20% of their snaps. Tied for 19th in power with 7% of their snaps. Tied for 10th in counter with 8% of their snaps. Tied for 15th in draw with 2% of their snaps. And tied for 25th in pin and pull with 3% of their snaps. So about what you'd expect from this type of offense, especially with Derrick Henry at running back. But jumping over to the offseason, and, Cass, I know you're excited to talk about it because you jumped the gun a little bit earlier. Free agency happened, as it does. And when free agency occurs, obviously players are going to both join teams and also leave teams. And the Titans, as you mentioned, had a lot of turnover this offseason. So just kind of as a baseline, and you can answer this either from a play perspective or just as a fan really liking a player perspective, even if he wasn't that great. What free agent loss do you think hurts the most?
Seeing how the team went, the team first started looking up when the team selected Taylor Lewan. That's the first time you could actually feel inspired to be a Titans fan.
Sure.
Because instead of the Titans taking a quarterback and then I'm going to use the Justin Fields and the right tackle y'all got from the left tackle y'all got from Tennessee. What's his
the left tackle we got from you mean Darnell Wright?
Yeah. Yes. Instead of taking your quarterback and then getting your tackle, the Titans did the opposite thing. They got their tackle and then got their quarterback.
Right.
So they went and got Taylor Lewan, and then the next year drafted Marcus. And people forget Marcus's years. Taylor was the best tackle in football. He was really good his first couple of years, to the point where his rookie season he was performing better than Michael Ruse, and he was an above average starter, and the Titans cut him like that. So I think, to me, that one hurts the most, because you saw what the team was before Taylor and how bad they had been since 2009. And then they got Taylor, and every season after that, it started looking up. Besides maybe 2015 when we were horrible and drafted Marcus. But every year after the drafting of Marcus, the team went up, and Taylor has always been this very outspoken person. And I think overall, that leadership is going to be hurt to lose, because you're not only just losing his leadership, you're losing the entire offensive line is gone now. The entire offensive line that Derek is known for playing with by Titans fans. Roger Saffold's gone. He went up to Buffalo and he's gone. Ben Jones is gone. Jack Conklin's in Cleveland. Nate Davis plays for the Bears now. So like the entire offensive line that I know playing with the Titans when the low line was really good is now scattered everywhere else. So do I think this unit that we got now could be at least decent? Yes, but could they be very bad? Depends. We just got to, like I said, like that's why I say Gamble describes this team so well.
Yeah.
At least offensively.
I will say, if they end up sticking with more of a zone scheme, I think that it'll be a fine offensive line. If they go more towards what Tim Kelly is used to, they're the worst offensive line in football. So there is I'll put it this way, there is a large range of outcomes for this offensive line. So I do think gambling is definitely a good way to put it. You're definitely gambling with the guys you have up front. Now, a player I want to highlight here, free agency wise, is David Long Jr., and not for the reason that a lot of people would probably think. I think he's an incredible football player. Do not get me wrong. I think Miami got themselves a great one. We talked him up plenty when we did the Dolphins team preview here on this channel. But I don't think this is like a huge loss for the Titans. And the reason for that is Monty Rice. I have become a Monty Rice fan very, very quickly. He's somebody that, last year when David Long was out, did a really nice job stepping up into his role and being the main off-ball linebacker for the Titans. He's instinctive in coverage, showed a lot of flashes last year of being a good cover linebacker, which is something that David Long never quite was. Like, he was an awesome thumper, but in coverage, he's kind of mediocre, right? And Monty Rice, he does something that I always look for in off-ball linebackers in coverage, and that's that he covers players. He doesn't cover grass. He's not just there to sit in his zone. If somebody comes through his zone or he sees somebody leaking, he'll trail with them, and that's really important. You need a linebacker that can do that. But additionally, he is a really nice run defender in his own right. He's a legitimate headhunter. He wants to fuck people up when he goes to hit. And I think the upside for him is higher than David Long because he's a better athlete. Like, the athletic tools, the size, all that good stuff is there. And when you look at Tennessee's recent history of linebackers, especially with Mike Vrabel, he makes their job incredibly easy. This is like the most linebacker-friendly system in football. And I think Monty Rice, and obviously you brought up Azeez al-Shaair earlier, those two are going to have a hell of a season. And however long they're in Tennessee, I think they're both going to be a really nice tandem at linebacker for the Titans.
It's actually funny that you mentioned Monty because as of right now, I think Monty is actually scheduled to miss the Saints game. It's undisclosed why he's gonna miss game one, because on the official depth chart for the Saints Titans game, it's Azeez and another UDFA from last year in Jack Gibbons, who actually ended up playing all of a majority of last season once David got hurt. And that's one of the main reasons, because if you actually look at it on a contract standpoint, we paid Azeez and David like the Miami Dolphins paid David is kind of similar to what we paid Azeez. So it wasn't like a totally we don't want to keep you thing. It was like David had a lot of injury issues with the Titans.
Yeah, for sure.
And you got to wonder, like, Azeez had never really got the chance to be that stud middle linebacker in San Francisco.
Yeah, because he was a strong or a weak side backer for pretty much the entirety of his career there. And the way the 49ers run their defense, the weak side backer doesn't get a lot of play. It was, Fred Warner and Drake Greenlaw, and then he would come in every once in a while, and if one of them went down, he would step in their spot. But he was very much the odd man out in their linebacker room for sure. And it's not because he's bad or anything. It's just the other two are so incredible.
Which is it's kind of been like the theme, I think, of our free agency class is guys that really haven't got a chance to play that could be really good. I think that fits for Azeez. I think that fits for Andre Dillard. I think that fits for a lot of the guys we got. Because like I said, the Titans didn't have a lot of money to go out and get guys, so they had to get guys like that with high upsides that could be players but aren't yet. And the biggest thing with me another guy like that is Sean Murphy-Bunting, who was stuck behind Jamal Dean and Carlton Davis, who really hasn't got the chance to be a number one. But the thing for me, I was a fan that was very, very much a big fan of David Long.
Mm-hmm.
You know from this is a funny thing, but you know from our Madden leagues how much I love me some David Long.
Yeah.
But I think it's the right decision because I can think of 3 seasons where he ended up missing significant playing time. And the Titans have always been able to really plug and play linebackers. Like you said,
and it's because Vrabel, it's such a linebacker-friendly system because he was a linebacker and he has a really great understanding of the position and knows how to take a lot of the stress off of them.
That's why I think you can, because I'm not sure if Vrabel just wants to play Gibbons over Monty, because there was no thing given of why Monty isn't the starter.
Well, maybe it's personal reasons. You never know.
Because but Gibbons was given the star over Monty, who actually I think Monty could, like you say, is a really good player. When he was asked to play, he played really well. I liked him coming out of college. I really liked the pick. And it's just, I would love to see what happens with Gibbons, because I feel like him and Aziz are kind of like the same type of linebacker, which is something the Titans haven't had. Like, both of them would be considered more of your run stopper linebackers, where I think Monty could be more your guy. Like, both of them, I think, could be liabilities in coverage, is the point I'm trying to make.
Okay.
Versus Monty, who I don't think is a liability in coverage.
Yeah, he was pretty solid last year, and he has the athletic upside to be pretty solid in coverage, for sure.
Which is why I think moving Elijah Molden to safety is going to play such a big factor. And I think this year we could see a lot of 3 safety looks with like a safety playing in the box along with a linebacker.
Yeah,
I think it. I know Elijah isn't like the big safety typically you would see playing in the box, but from a pass coverage perspective, it would. I think it could fit the team.
Yeah, for sure. And I think in that situation, you probably put Amani up in the box. Or even Byard. Byard's shown he can play up in the box. Like, that's why I love Kevin Byard so much. Not to get completely off topic, but, you look at safeties in the NFL right now. If you want a guy who can come up and, play in the box, defend the run, you're probably picking Derwin James, right? If you want a guy who's a stud in coverage, has a ton of range, you're probably taking a guy like Minkah Fitzpatrick. If you want a guy who can do both of those at a really high level, you take Kevin Byard. Now, he's not as big as Derwin. He might not be as physical as Derwin, and he might not be as rangy as Minkah, but he's so well balanced in both aspects that I think that makes him the best safety in football. So, you can afford to get cute with your safeties and do different things because of how good Kevin Byard is and because of how good Amani Hooker is.
There's a quote by one of the best NFL players, in my opinion, in Deion Sanders of all time. And he says, big players make big plays in big game situations. That's a quote that he said. And I know he didn't make that, but that's a quote he says a lot.
Kevin Byard, that I quote often.
That, in my opinion, is the epitome of what Kevin Byard is. There's multiple situations where, okay, we'll take, for example, Josh Dobbs' first game last year. Titans are playing against the Cowboys in a game that basically doesn't mean anything. So there is no reason for Kevin Byard to play. But Kevin Byard plays and doesn't only play, walks away with 2 interceptions and a forced fumble, as well as almost getting his hand on Dak, a 3rd pick from Dak. So not only did Byard play when he didn't have to, he played and had his best game of the season when he didn't have to. Yeah. So not only was he playing, he was playing at over 100%. Like, he was playing full speed. And then, like I said, big players make big plays in big situations. The first game Derek was out when he broke his foot was the game on Sunday Night Football against the Los Angeles Rams. And the first play from Matt Stafford was an out route. Byard picked it off after the Titans scored. And then the Rams never came back from that once the Titans went up 14-0. There's plays where it seems like when the Titans need Byard to make a play for him, he's always been there ever since he got drafted. We're talking about a guy that his first year getting significant snaps as a starter led the league in interceptions. Like, when it's all said and done, Byard could be the best player to ever wear a Tennessee Titans jersey. I've been very adamant of saying that over the last couple of years.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a crazy statement by any means. But shifting back to free agency, looking at some of the other guys that left, and not to go into too much detail because I don't think any of these guys are going to be that big of a loss for the Titans. Jump in if you disagree, but David Long, DeMarcus Walker, we talked about them. Ben Jones, Nate Davis, we talked about them. Taylor Lewan, we talked about him. Zach Cunningham, kind of whatever. Bud Dupree, I really don't think that's as big of a loss as people are going to think, mainly because of a guy they brought in. Austin Hooper, same deal. It doesn't matter. You've got Chig. That's all you need. Robert Woods, he played a lot of snaps last year, but the receiver room, we've already talked about that at length. Dennis Daly, as you pointed out, very bad at football, so it's good that he's gone. And then Dylan Cole doesn't matter. I just have him written down because he's also a Chicago Bear now, and I had to bring it up.
Dylan Cole is a special teams ace. Titans fan love Dylan Cole.
Good to know. Good to know. I love me a good special teamer. And there were also like 40 other names. That might be a slight exaggeration, but there were a bunch of guys that left. And like I said, I think we kind of covered the ones that matter. And then looking at the guys that you guys retained, Jeff Simmons, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, T.R. Tart, we talked about all them. Aaron Brewer, and then correct me if any of these guys got cut down from the 53-man roster. I pulled this list together a while ago, and I kind of forgot to update it. Corey Levin, Morgan Cox, and Naquan Jones. Did any of them get cut?
If I'm not... No. Because Corey got re-signed. Corey got cut, and then Corey got re-signed.
Sick. So, okay.
And then Morgan got actually named as a team captain. So
nice. And then looking at the free agent additions, we've talked about some of these guys at length, obviously with DeAndre Hopkins, Azeez al-Shaair, Andre Dillard, Sean Murphy-Bunting. A couple other names here, Trayvon Wesco coming over from my Chicago Bears, kind of a tight end, fullback, H-back hybrid player. Hope to God he plays fullback for this team because they need one, but we'll have to see there. Daniel Brunskill coming over from the 49ers, as you corrected me with earlier. Good wide zone pass blocker and run blocker. Otherwise, I don't know, because I am concerned about what he would do in a different type of offense, as I've said already at length about that offensive line. And then the guy that I think makes up for Bud Dupree leaving is Arden Key, who ironically is coming over from the Jacksonville Jaguars. And Cass, I can see you're incredibly excited about him, so why don't you go ahead and take the floor? Go ahead and talk about him.
A person that was absolutely disrespected by the Jacksonville Kitty Cats. He apparently, his agent was told, this is the report that has been put out, that like he wasn't worth the money he was asking for. Well, Tennessee gave him the money he was asking for. So I would love to see Arden Key be a reason, like a big factor in some of these Jags-Titans games.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about revenge games. There we go. There's some revenge games for you.
For sure.
Because, like, it was exactly the same situation with Danico. If you remember, Danico was told the same thing by the Indianapolis Colts, that he was not worth the money. And he went over to Tennessee and has been an absolute baller. So, which you would take that much more disrespectful, but I've actually been looking into it. That actually gets told to a lot of players that they're not worth the money they're asking for. So it's not as disrespecting as it would seem like coming off, but
sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. I
was gonna say I've got written down for Arden Key, just like for each player that I have written down in my notes, I have little obviously notes for to remind myself of different things. And all I have written down for Arden Key is super stunt master, because that is what he is. He is awesome on stunts. And like we already said, Mike Vrabel, loves stunts, and he's somebody that can not only loop, but he can also pin. He can do a little bit of everything. So you've got him, you've got Danico, and you've got Harold Landry all on the same defensive line, cooking up, flying all sorts of different directions. Oh my God. It's going to be wild.
It's going to
On
be
the
a bad
Titans
day.
front.
It's going to be a bad day for quarterbacks.
Mhm.
And this is the first time I've actually like been really excited. This defensive line against some of the offensive lines in the AFC is going to be what keeps us in some games. This is what I'm talking about. The Titans aren't offensively going to be able to beat some of the best teams in the AFC. That's just not. But this
Right.
defense can hold some of the best offenses in the AFC, in my opinion, because of the defensive line.
Yeah. Now, the only issue with that is going to be, obviously, as the game goes on, defense gets tired. And I don't know how confident I am in your offense to kind of keep your defense off the field, but the defense certainly is going to give teams fits. It's going to be a top 15 defense, no matter what, I'd say. And another guy that got brought in, obviously, Travis Gibson from the Chicago Bears. I'm just bringing him up to say he's a solid rotational piece. He's somebody that I was a fan of, not only because he made some exciting plays when he played in Chicago's defense when it was a 3-4, which is what he's going to now in Tennessee, obviously, but also if you've ever seen the man make any sort of play, his sack celebration is summoning Thor's hammer and then slamming the ground with it, which as a nerd, as you can tell by the Batman poster over my shoulder, I absolutely adore. And I'm sad that that energy is leaving my favorite team, but Travis just knew he didn't belong in this type of defense. So
as a Titans fan, that is similar to like our opening game ceremony, like for games, because the whole point of the Titans opening game ceremony is they plant the sword in the middle of the field.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so I would love to see like a sack at a home game, and like he do like the Thor hammer thing at the middle of the field. Like
that would be pretty sick.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna tell a funny story real quick.
Oh,
we were all in a group chat when we had talked about Travis Gibson, and I was like, I didn't mention it, but I was thinking to myself, you were saying how like he wanted out of the Bears and he wanted like to go to a different team and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking, it really would make this defense so much better to have another depth piece to add on. But there's no way the Titans sign him. There's like that's not happening. So I'm not even gonna mention it because I'm gonna get crucified if I even mention it. Because I got crucified for saying the Titans were gonna get DeAndre Hopkins because everybody was like, D-Hop said he wanted to go and play for a contending quarterback.
So which, by the way, just like to point out, DeAndre Hopkins is a bold-faced liar for saying that.
I think this is what I think. I think people didn't look into the situation as much. You could be blind and see Mike Vrabel and Tim Kelly both have such a close relationship with DeAndre Hopkins personally.
No, yeah, I get that. I get that. I'm just saying specifically the I want to play with a contending quarterback comment was a bold-faced lie. The fit makes sense. I'm not questioning the fit. But you can't say you want to play with a real quarterback and then go side with Ryan Tannehill. Come on now.
Now,
let's be serious.
The thing is I don't think that Tennessee was his first option. I thought, to be honest, I'm going to be 100% honest. I think he was thinking he was going to get more offers than Tennessee and New England, if you want.
Yeah.
And I know
Kansas City should have done. The freaking morons.
I was bro. I was in a party, and y'all won't know who this is, but I was in a party with Valente and Caleb yesterday, and I was saying
they will know if they've watched all the episodes of the series. They will know who they are. Valente was on the Saints episode, and Caleb was on the Broncos episode. So,
I was saying Casey would have really loved DeAndre Hopkins about now.
Yeah. You'd think. You'd think, like D-Hop, not to get too off topic, but they win that game with D-Hop. They win it. The Lions are fraudulent. Sorry, go ahead.
Not to like bring up entirely different teams, but Mr. Caleb had brought up that maybe one of the reasons they didn't go get D-Hop is because they're attempting to trade for somebody from an NFC South team.
Well, maybe. That would make sense. I know that whole situation with Mike Evans is a bit goofy. But I should bring up, too, the Titans did sign another former Chicago Bear that I forgot about until just now, and that's Kindle Vildor. And I'm telling you right now, as a Chicago Bears fan, thank you.
Is he bad?
Thank you for taking him away. Yes, he is awful. He is horrible. He is very much not good at football. So please enjoy. I say that and now he'll have some crazy game for the Titans, and someone will come back and clip this and be like, "What was that? You talking shit?" No, he was very much not good in Chicago.
He might have got cut because he's not on the active 53 right now.
I was about to cheer, but I don't want to cheer for a man to lose his job. That's pretty fucked up.
Oh, yeah, never mind. He's on the 53. He's just not on the depth chart.
Oh. Okay. Anyways, talking about players that are actually good at football, let's talk about the draft. Who's your favorite pick from the Titans draft class?
I think if you give me a couple of I think after these players actually like full start playing and everything, I think my pick will be very different. Right now it's Tajay Spears.
Mm-hmm.
But it very easily could be Will Levis in a couple of years.
Sure.
But right now it's Tajay Spears. Another pick I really like is wide receiver. Just because I love the story. I love how good he's been. The fact that he made the 53. Like, I love Tajay because I think Tajay is going to play a significant role in this offense, just in general. He should. But the fact that this dude's made the 53 is going to see snaps and his story of everything.
Mm-hmm.
The story of Colton Dowell maybe is something they need to write a movie about. Like living in an apartment, going to sleep, looking out your window, looking at Nissan Stadium, dreaming of playing there, and now you are on the
crazy.
Now you're on the 53. Like growing up, you lived in a house where you could see Nissan Stadium going to sleep every night. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
But from a full talent perspective, Tajay Spears.
Yeah.
If anybody watched the preseason and is not impressed with what Mr. Tajay Spears can bring, from a draft perspective, if we're talking about just the picks we drafted, that's the guy I'm most excited about. Overall, I think Caleb Murphy might be the player I'm excited about.
Yeah, if Tajay's knees weren't a potential issue, he would have been my RB2 over Jahmyr Gibbs. Like I love Tajay. You know how big of a fan I was, and it respectfully kind of broke my heart that he got picked by the Titans. Not anything against the Titans. It's just you have Derrick Henry.
We might not after this year.
You do for now. And I'll put it this way: the immediate reaction from me was like, "Oh, he's RB2. What are we doing?" Like it hurt, but like you said, there is a chance that Henry's future's kind of up in the air right now.
This has got to be thrown in here because it's massive news right now. Derek, over the last couple of interviews he's done, has hinted at a retirement after this season because he's been talking about like last rides and stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I don't know if he's talking about like just with the team or
he's leaving the Titans and becoming
do not say a Chicago Bear.
No. We do not need him.
You don't want the best running back in football, in my opinion, dog. Okay.
No, I'd love Nick Chubb.
Okay, man.
Or Christian McCaffrey. That'd be pretty cool.
Hey, I thought
Saquon Barkley.
I thought you said you wanted a running back, not a receiver. Like, what are you doing here?
I mean, Christian McCaffrey and Saquon are both pretty good running backs. Maybe Josh Jacobs. I'm just teasing at this point. Henry's a top 4 back. But no, I didn't even know that. That's scary. I don't like that.
I've been saying that for a little while now that I could see.
Yeah.
I think it would be kind of like a cool send off to have Ryan and Derek both retire the same year because they're, in my opinion, you can say I'm wrong. Their careers are always going to be forever tied with each other.
I mean, they were teammates for how long?
But yeah, I'm excited to see like a Michael Jordan last ride scenario with Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry.
God, again, with all due respect, what a anticlimactic last ride that'll be. I'm going to come back to this, and the Titans are going to win the Super Bowl somehow, and I'm just going to look like the biggest asshole on the planet. That's my luck.
No, bro. What? How crazy would that be? Derek and Ryan win the Super Bowl, and on the Super Bowl podium, they both announce their retirement together.
I'd be jumping on the NFL scripted bandwagon. That would be my immediate reaction.
No, but like that would be like top moment all time in NFL. Like that would be.
Yep, a top scripted moment.
Yeah, NFL. Bro, D-Hop, when he first got signed by the Titans, he said reading the Titans regular season script, and it was funny, bro.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to see that happen, you can always boot up Madden. Surely you can pull that off in Madden.
Nah, Derrick Henry, for some reason in Madden, plays till he's like 45 for some reason. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. But no, like I said, I agree. Tyjae Spears is my favorite pick by far. I mean, you've got a sick dual threat halfback that can catch the ball out of the backfield at a high level, run routes really well. He's shifty. He's awesome.
He's what we wanted Darrington Evans to be.
Yes, absolutely. That's a really good comparison, actually. He is everything that people wanted Darrington Evans to be. Yeah.
And it's kind of crazy because people, like some Titans fans, saw how good Julius Chestnut played in the preseason, and we're like, "Is Tajay the number 2?" Like, and I was like, "The thing Tajay, okay," because I think it's a good enough comparison. Because Julius did play out of his mind in the preseason. That's not even. But anyway, Julius has so much similar skill set to Derek. Not like skill set, but what they do is similar. Okay. Versus Tajay can catch the ball, line up at receiver, run the ball. Like, he can do all that. You ask Derrick Henry to line up at wide receiver, it's not going too well.
Curtains. It's curtains. But looking at the rest of this draft class, obviously Peter Skoronski was, in my opinion, the best lineman in the class. Just the most NFL ready lineman in the class. He's playing guard for you guys officially, right?
Yes, left guard.
So I was right when I evaluated him as a guard. Not like that was a hot take, but I did have some people give me shit for that when I had him listed as a guard on my big board.
Which I'm not even going to lie. I'm kind of surprised that they didn't plug him in at right tackle.
Just to see it. Like, I'm a little surprised, too, that they didn't let him fail at tackle before playing him at guard. But maybe they don't want to hurt his confidence.
No, this is my thing. With the drastic need the Titans have at right tackle, I'm surprised he didn't play there. Because you got a guy that can play guard that they drafted who was a highly touted draftee.
Jalen Duncan, right?
No, Dylan Redunds was.
Oh, I thought you meant this year. Because isn't Jalen Duncan playing guard for you guys?
Yes, he's and that dude is massive. He's like 6'7". I wanted him to play right tackle.
Yeah, because he played tackle in college.
Mm-hmm. But like I was saying, I was surprised they didn't put Skoronski out at right tackle at least until MPF got back.
The only issue with that is the experience. Like, if you're moving him around a bunch in his rookie year, that could hurt his confidence and mess up his development. So I get it. I understand it. Obviously, they took Will Levis in the second round. We've already talked about him. In my opinion, his floor is Ryan Tannehill. Like, in his Titans tenure, his ceiling is like Matt Stafford. He has an awesome arm. His tape when he actually had a team around him at Kentucky was pretty damn solid. Last year, when there was literally nothing left, there were a lot of mistakes. You're hoping you can kind of coach that out of him, which I'm sure they'll be able to. Jalen Duncan, we talked about. I liked him as a pick. He's a fun, like, mauler with a mean streak, which is fantastic. And then you brought up Colton Dowell. The only pick that I did not like from this class from the Titans was Josh Whyle. And Cass, we're in the same boat with that. We both are not Josh Whyle fans.
No, because I would have loved Davis Allen. I've already talked about how I was a massive Clemson fan, right? I'm kind of getting off that because I didn't watch a game last year. And in my opinion, if you're going to be a fan of a team, you have to have at least watched games recently. I didn't watch a single Clemson game last year, so I can't call myself a fan anymore. But I had seen a majority of Davis Allen's career. And I was high on him. I was high on Zach Kuntz out of Old Dominion. There were guys I wanted. I thought that the Titans shouldn't have took. Because, see, I liked Tajay as a pick. I just didn't like the pick of a running back, if that makes...
I get you.
Like, if I'm not wrong, Josh Downs was available at that pick, and that would have been a pick I would have been happy with.
Yeah.
But with that, that's totally different than what we're talking about here with Wiley. There were other people at his position that were better than him.
Not only at his position, but all of Wiley's strengths, Davis Allen and Zach Kuntz possessed, but better. Like, Zach Kuntz was way more athletic than Wiley. Davis Allen is a way better blocker and contested catcher than Wiley. Like, anything you like in Josh Wiley, you can point at one of those two guys who went after him, and they possess that trait, but better. It's kind of wild that the Titans went with Wiley, in my opinion.
The only reason, and this is something I just thought of while we were here, Josh Wiley went to Cincinnati, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Mike Vrabel and Luke Fickell, the head coach of Cincinnati, are like this. And that he could have, like, when he was evaluating tight ends, I don't know, like, Vrabel's connections, but I think it's much more likely he called one of his best friends in Luke Fickell versus not knowing somebody from Old Dominion or Clemson, and was able to get get more knowledge on that player, and that gave him more of a.
And that makes sense. That'll happen. I still don't like the pick, though.
I don't like it either. I'm not even.
That's the only pick they made that I wasn't a fan of. Everything else I loved. The Levis pick in the second round was awesome. He was QB4 for me. Had a first round grade on him. Getting him in the second round was great. They got a top 10 player outside of the top 10 with Peter Skoronski. They got one of the 3 best running backs in the class. Jalen Duncan is like a good mean streak run blocker, which is something you need. Colton Dowell, I didn't really get to watch a ton of, but I'm with you. I love his story. I think that's awesome. I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. So, genuinely speaking, the only player I had an issue with was Wiley.
And it's kind of, I wish somebody would have been recording me, because it would have been one of the funniest TikTok clips I would have ever been able to post myself. When they didn't select Will Levis with the 11th overall pick, I screamed Ryan's the quarterback for the next 5 years. I said that, like, they're going to re-sign him. It's over. Ryan's going to be the quarterback. And then they take Will Levis in the second round. Like, I was like,
oh, no, they did the right thing. I'm sorry. That was rude. I just like pushing your buttons with Tannehill.
No,
it's funny at this point.
Before, like, because at the point of the draft, like, since the draft to now, I've come to terms with the fact that it's the smart team decision not to re-sign Ryan after this year. It's like, as much as I love him as a player, and I hope his career is not over, because I still think he could be a really good backup somewhere, or if a team needs a starter, he could go play for them. But I like his career after this year, in my opinion, is pretty much and people have said even if he goes to the playoffs and win a playoff game, it's still like, because you can't spend that high a draft value on quarterbacks and then not play them.
And you can't re-sign Tannehill for as much money as he's going to want, especially if you win a playoff game.
Like, there's no world where I could see a world where he gets. There's like, so between Levis and Willis are going to be the decision next year. And right now, I don't know. It's still an I don't know. I think next preseason might end up deciding that.
I would hope the preseason doesn't decide your quarterback battle.
No, because I don't know how we can look at this, because we didn't get to see Will his rookie year. Like, Will played maybe a quarter worth of plays, and that's all we got all preseason. Because he messed up his quad, and then he had eye surgery. He had eye surgery in the offseason leading up to the first game, and that still wasn't completely healed. Apparently, he was having like blurry vision the first game he played against the Bears. So that was bothering him. And then he messed up his quad in practice, so we didn't get to see him after that.
Gotcha.
And Malik didn't look that great. Like, Malik was second in passing yards in the preseason and played 2 full games. Like you
That's
got
tough.
other quarterbacks that played like a half or a quarter and got almost the same amount of him, and he played 2 full games.
Yeah.
But
yeah, kind of looking forward to this upcoming season. I've got one last question for you, and it's a two-parter. What are your expectations for this team record-wise? And you can either give me a straight prediction or a ceiling and a floor. And then what player are you most excited to watch?
the floor could be anywhere from, like, I've seen stuff that I could 100% see if we still struggle with injuries, the scheme is messed up, all that. I could see this team going 14-3, 13-4. I could see like it being really bad.
Mm-hmm.
But I could also see we get a breakout from Burks. The offensive line is decent. D-Hop looks okay. Ryan is able to be profitable off of D-Hop and Burks looking good and Derek being good. I could see, because that's what this team is banking on. This team will be good if the offense is at least decent.
Yeah.
If the offense is decent, this team's a playoff team, in my opinion.
Playoff teams pushing it just because of how stacked the AFC is. Like, in my opinion. Now, I understand the optimism as a fan, but...
No, the reason I'm saying that is because of how easy our Pacifical schedule is.
Oh, okay. That's fair. I don't have the Titans schedule pulled up in front of me,
like
so that's fair.
Like, I know you've seen this. People are saying the Jags could be the number 1 seed because of how easy their schedule is.
Right. I have seen that.
And our schedule is very similar with ease-wise. Like, we play the NFC. We play the NFC South, which besides the Saints could be, and the Falcons, because I know you're high on the Falcons. Besides that, the Panthers could be a team that you could get a win on. I'm not going to go through all the teams. The Bucs could be a team you could get a win on. And then we play the Texans and the Colts twice a year. That's 4 wins right there, depending on how they play and how Bryce and Stroud look. I mean, not Bryce, Stroud and Richardson look.
Mm-hmm.
So the schedule doesn't look like too harmful. I will say the high I have on this team could be a high of like if we're talking ceiling, 10-7, 11-6 is like as high as I think we could go. Like, because this team isn't going to be like 14-3. That's not
right. Yeah. Me personally. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Now, as far as this is something I wanted to put in a big upset. I think the Titans could do.
Okay.
I think the Titans could beat the Ravens in London, and like as it hyped as a team the Ravens are going in, I think it's a chance the Ravens have a really good record heading into that game in London. And I think there's a chance we can, like, schematically, the Titans, like, because if I'm not wrong, the Ravens have had a lot of offensive line turnover. Like, if I'm not wrong, one of their better offensive linemen's left.
They lost Ben Powers, yeah.
So they could struggle against, like, how good our defensive line is going to be. But then again, you got Lamar Jackson and all that, and he's able to really escape. But Vrabel's always been really able to control playing against Lamar. But like, what was you about to move on? Because I see
no, you're good. I was gonna say, me personally, record wise, I think it's tough for me because, like I said, if it for me, it all depends on Tim Kelly. It all depends on what he's doing schematically with this team. If he leaves some things the same and kind of adapts what Downing was doing, I can see this team winning 7 or 8 games. Mm-hmm. If he doesn't, and he goes all the way back to his Bill O'Brien roots, 4 is probably about where I think the Titans land. And I know that sounds incredibly pessimistic, but I'm telling you, I don't have any faith in Tannehill to run that type of offense. It's not playing to the strengths of your weapons. Your offensive line doesn't fit it. Like, it doesn't benefit. I've said it 15 times already. It doesn't benefit anybody but Chig and DeAndre Hopkins if that's the case.
That's what I was saying when we were talking about, like, lows. That would be a low scenario for me going, like, 3 and I think it would be 3-14, 4-3. I mean, 4-13.
Yeah.
But, like, I'm just so high on how good this defense could be. I really
And
am.
I understand that completely. You know as well as I do, I'm a defensive guy. Defense wins championships. I'm a firm believer in that. I'm a Bears fan, for Christ's sakes. I know how important a good defense can be. But when you're playing in a conference with so many superstar quarterbacks, and your quarterback is potentially Ryan Tannehill in a system that doesn't play to his strengths and is essentially putting him in the same position he was in back in Miami, I'm not very confident because your defenses can be great, but if your offense can't stay on the
And
field, that
score.
defense is going to
That's
get
true.
tired, and you can't score, and you're not going to be able to keep up. Like the Titans, like in this situation where they win 4 games, the Titans have like a top 15 defense. It's just their offense is bottom 5. And I, as much as I hate to say it, I don't think that's an incredibly unrealistic scenario for the Titans. Now that being said, I know you get the Vrabel tax, kind of like with Tomlin, where you're going to win games you probably shouldn't on paper because Vrabel's such an awesome head coach, but that can only take you so far.
Agreed. That's why I'm saying I'm not going like insane. Like,
yeah, no, 10. I think 10 is a very reasonable ceiling for the Titans.
Because like if we're talking about the reason I say I think the ceiling of this team is to make the playoffs and maybe be like a first round exit, or it maybe win a playoff game and lose the second round, is because I know people are saying the AFC is so stacked. I still think 9-8 could get you a playoff spot because I think one team's going to get in at 9-8 because I know I've seen a bunch of boards where the Steelers end up going 9-8 and they get in.
Yeah.
So. And the Titans end up playing the Steelers, and I don't know how all the tiebreakers work, but say the Titans and Steelers go 9-8, Titans have the tiebreaker win, then that would put them in over. You see what I'm saying? Like I don't think it's completely impossible that the Titans get in and win a game as the 9-8, and then like, but if we get in as the 17 and draw like the fucking 15-2 Chiefs, it's like But after that game last night, dude, I don't see the Chiefs going 15-2 unless Travis Kelce comes back and grows 4 arms.
Yeah, like I said, I think anywhere it's a weird range for the Titans, but I think 4 to 10 wins is a really reasonable estimation because there's really so many different outcomes with this team.
You could be above average to ass, like
right, right. But the second part of that question is, what player are you most excited to watch this year?
My favorite player on the Titans. And people were probably, as a big defensive guy, my favorite player is Kevin Byard and Harold Landry and Christian Fulton. Those are my favorite 3. But my favorite player to watch on the Titans is my childhood favorite player is DeAndre Hopkins. It's got to be.
Okay. I was holding my breath. I thought you were going to steal my answer because then I wouldn't get my TikTok clip. Okay, perfect. Go ahead. Talk about D-Hop.
But just seeing how good he was in college, seeing how good that receiving room was in college at Clemson, Adam Humphries, DeAndre Hopkins, Sammy Watkins, 2 former Titans on that team, by the way, and Adam Humphries and DeAndre Hopkins. Seeing how much they elevated Taj Boyd. That's why I think, like, sometimes life does things that are very storybook. And it's so storybook to me that one of my favorite players growing up is now on my favorite team. But yeah, I think Diop, without a doubt, is probably the player I'm most excited to see. Because of course I could say
that's totally understandable.
Because I couldn't be hype about Ryan because I'm always going to have that in the back of my head that even if Ryan goes freaking insane, goes back to 2019, throws 35 touchdowns, 7 picks, or goes crazy, he's not getting re-signed at the season. So why does it matter? Like,
yeah,
why do I want to see him ball out? Like, yeah, that'll do good for us this season, but then I'm going to go see him play for another team, and as long as it ain't the freaking Broncos or the Saints, dude, if he goes plays at the Denver Broncos and wins the Super Bowl, I'm gonna kick a horse.
I don't think you have to worry about that happening, thankfully. But for me personally, the player I'm most excited to watch for you guys next year, if it's not apparent, is Chig. I am a very large Chig enjoyer, both literally and metaphorically. I love Chig. I love what he brings to the table. Last year, obviously, he was fantastic, right? He was able to use his speed in the Shanahanian offense to just pull away from linebackers on crossing routes and routes over the middle of the field, and was really able to be a legit weapon for the Titans last year. And now this year, if they stick with that type of offense, he'll just do more of the same at a higher level. Or if you switch to a more, the pro style offense we were talking about, he has the ability to run routes at a high level. He's fast enough to create separation. He's a mean player when it comes to blocking. You can use him out of the backfield as a fullback, as an H-back. I think there were a couple plays where he straight up ran the ball for you guys last year.
Yeah.
Like, I adore Chig. He is one of my favorite players in the entire league. I put together my all agenda team, and I will say I left Chig off of it only because I think everybody and their mother is predicting a Chig breakout, and I didn't just want to go with the consensus. But there's a reason why everybody's predicting a Chig breakout, because he's an incredible athlete. He's a super fun player to watch.
Should have been the starter last year.
Absolutely. And we live in a world where there's not a lot of like elite tight ends right now. And Chig has all of the traits necessary to be one of the 5 to 7 best pass catching tight ends in football, on top of being a willing blocker and having that mean streak to him. So I adore Chig, and I understand why Titans fans love him so much. And he, for the rest of his career, is either going to be very similar to Jonnu Smith or Delaney Walker. And I'm sure Titans fans, it's a win-win.
It's every time. Like, Delaney's even got mad. Delaney got mad at an interview and walked off the interview because every question that somebody would answer him, how much comparison do you see yourself to Chig? Like, it's every question, and he's committedly constant that I don't want Chig to try to live up to what I was.
Sure,
I
and
want
that's totally
him
fair
to be his own person because I don't want him to think he has to live up to an expectation. Because really, I believe.
I think this might come off as sacrilegious to Titans fans, and maybe this is just my age showing, and I don't remember prime Delaney Walker as well as I think I do. But I think Chig has the upside to be better than Delaney Walker was. Like, I think Chig's a more athletic player, and I like him more as a route runner.
I think I can agree with that, even though, like, as a kid, I was very delusional. And I used to
It's not even delusional. Delaney Walker's awesome. I'm not saying he wasn't incredible. I'm just saying Chig is that good that I think he could exceed that.
Before, like, I really started watching ball, and I was, like, just a Titan fan watching the games when I could, when they would come on TV. I was against everybody was saying, I think if I had to choose a tight end, I think I'd rather have Delaney than Rob Gronkowski. I was on that train, and like everybody cruised.
You knew ball. You knew ball. That's a based answer.
Like, but we're talking about like Rob Peak era with the Patriots.
No, I know.
And like, because when I would turn on Titans games, they had nobody catching balls, bro. Like, if Delaney didn't go for 240, they weren't winning a game, dog. Like,
that's how I felt about Jordan Howard in 2016. I thought he was the second best running back in football. Granted, much different there because Jordan Howard actually wasn't that good, and Delaney Walker was incredible.
But yeah, and I don't know, like, we could really put Jonnu on the list of guys that were really impacted by scheme, maybe, because he has not been good anywhere he went outside of Tennessee.
Yeah, it's another scheme thing. He's a Shanahanian tight end. I think he'll be a lot better in Atlanta this year, because he's going back with Arthur Smith, obviously. But yeah, he's one of those guys that just has to be used in a certain way, and a lot of the places he's went, namely New England, just didn't use him in that way.
Because when I first saw that they got Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith the same free agency class, I was like, this passing attack's about to go crazy.
Yeah, all that being said, I think that about wraps us up here. So before we head out, Cass, if you'd like to plug anything, by all means, the floor is yours, and I'll make sure to put all your links down in the description below.
One of the biggest plugs I'm going to put is I'm not going to plug my channel. I have a Pacific video coming out. I don't know when it'll come out because it won't come out on Sunday, and it might not even come out on Monday.
Okay.
But there is a vlog going to come out with me and Mr. Saints fan Valente. We are going to be attending the week 1 opener of the Titans and Saints game, and we're going to be vlogging our experience. His vlog starting off in Louisville, mine starting off in Auburn, Alabama, and we are going to be like piecing those videos together to like match, and then we're going to record like a cool like meetup vlog. It's going to be really cool. Then I'm going to watch the Titans win 48-0, and it's going to be a great day.
Damn, gonna miss an extra point?
Yeah, I guess so. What's your exact prediction for that game? Because my real prediction is 24-20.
Fuck if I know. I don't know. I one team will score more points than the other.
I made the prediction on the Valente video me and him did. It was 24-20, and that somebody on either the Saints or Titans had a pick six. That was the prediction I made. But
it will be Travis Gibson. Call him my shot.
All right, I'm gonna remember. Travis Gibson's either got to get a pick six or a sack.
David Miller. Pick six. Just a pick six. Sack doesn't count. Don't give me credit if he gets a sack.
We gotta add Travis Gibson into the MFML D&D. Right. Bye, guys.
Yeah, but all that being said, I think that about wraps us up here. Cass, thank you so much for coming on. And I know you wanted to plug your specific video, but unfortunately that will not be out by the time this gets uploaded. So I'll make sure to put your YouTube channel down there and people can go find that vlog whenever it comes out here within the next few days. But you can also check out my links down in the description below. Obviously, just Miller Football on all platforms, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, primarily on Twitter and TikTok outside of YouTube, obviously.
Drop this man a sub because he's been working his booty off trying to get all these up. Especially this one. Dog, it's been an act of Congress trying to get this one.
But yeah, you can check those out. And then my 2 podcasts as well, Run the North and Bear Down Boys. They're both in the description below. And, you know, I'd really appreciate it if you check those out and also leave a like down below. Shows your support, shows you care. That's always a great thing. It makes me feel good. It makes me feel like people out there care about what I have to say. And also make sure to subscribe down below. We just hit like 280 subs. We're making that push for 300. We're so close. I wanted to get there by the start of the season, but that's not going to happen. Either way, we're getting close. We're going to get there here soon.
You're trying to pass me, bro. Like, why you
But to everyone out there watching, and obviously Cass here joining me today, I hope you all have a wonderful day, evening, night, afternoon, whatever time of day it is for you. I hope you enjoy it because you're all wonderful people and you deserve it.